Hi everyone, a very good evening to all of you. I hope I am visible, audible. Hello Shanavaz. All right. So, how are you all? Some of you have joined, some of you are joining. The chat is getting updated. Hello Abdullah Bidi. Hello Smriti Santosh. Good evening, all of you. How are you all? Okay, so today we are going to discuss a very interesting topic. Okay, since you mentioned yesterday you would want to discuss something that is abstract, so this is not really abstract. Okay, it is topical. However, it is at the same time dense. Okay, it requires higher order comprehension. Okay, so we will actually read and understand it slide by slide before we launch into questions. Okay, so very topical, very latest. Good evening, Sai. Hello, Devrat. Hi, Parbat. Oh, hi. So you are only cat. Parbhat, is it? Okay. So here's a collage for you. Right. So tell me what seems to be happening in this collage. What is it about? Hello, Ankit. All right. So I think you can gauge from this collage that it is about. Good evening, Vishal. Okay. Russia's attack on Ukraine, the Russia-Ukraine war that has been going on since 2022, right? And I think yesterday or day before yesterday, I read an article about the number of casualties of Russian soldiers. So in casualties, they included those Russian soldiers who had been killed plus those who had been injured, right? And they said that neared 1 million. 9,50,000, that was the precise number as per a study. Okay, and this is Russian soldiers we are talking about. Okay, so this has been the toll on Russian military of this war that is being waged in Ukraine also. While Ukraine does not have very precise estimates, again it was somewhere in the vicinity, I think, of 4,50,000 or something like this, right? They don't have precise estimates. So, and this is just about soldiers. I'm just talking about soldiers. I'm not even talking about civilians, right? So, yes, we are going to discuss the war, but that's not the, it's again the background of what we are going to discuss today, right? It's at the background of this. We are rather going to talk about something called dispolitics, okay, through this Russia-Ukraine example. Okay, so where does this article excerpt come from? It's from this website called publicbooks.org. Now, why have I brought an article from here? What do you think? Why would I bring an article from such a source, which is probably not something that's very common, right? So the reason is that, yes, a passage from this particular source appeared in CAT. I think it was 2023 or something, but yes, it has appeared in the previous years. It was on behavioral economics. I remember the topic. Okay, so the genre is politics. Definitely, I think by now you know this. 562 words. This is just an excerpt. The original article is longer, right? Much longer and quite interesting. I highly recommend you to read it. Okay, and before we begin, I would just like to talk about a bit about my experience. I mean, of course, I haven't been to Russia, I haven't been to Ukraine, but as part of my studies in St. Andrews, I taught some housekeeping staff, okay, of the university. I taught them basic English, essential English language skills. And one of my students was Russian and the other was Ukrainian. Okay, and they were actually good friends. Okay, so they were good friends. You know, Russian and Ukraine language, they do share some similarities, and therefore they were able to understand each other. So, once you move outside the country, once you move beyond this narrow view of borders, you realize people don't want war, right? The common people, especially. Okay. All right. So, let's begin with our article for today. You read this slide and then we'll read it together. We'll comprehend it, then we'll go to the next slide. This is the approach we'll follow today. Okay, because otherwise this could be slightly complex for you. Okay, let's go. Done. Perfect. So, it gives you an idea that we are using this to talk about dispolitics. Yeah, using this Russia's war on Ukraine. So, it says that Russia's war on Ukraine reflects a tide. It's a part of a tide that has been rising across the globe. So, it's not just happening in Russia. Okay, this is a tide that has been rising across the globe. And what is it drowning out? What is it that is suffering? Okay, it is drowning out long taken for granted political forms. So some long taken for granted political forms would be, let's say, democracies, liberal democracies, even monarchies, autocracies. Yes, so there is a tide that is rising across the globe and it is drowning out these long taken for granted political forms. So what is happening? Why are they drowning out? What is arising in their place? In their place has emerged a dysmorphic, dysplastic and dystopian politics without ground, without any stability, without any stable meaning or substantive objective. So what is happening is that there is a rise of a dysmorphic. Morph means form, right? So amorphous means formless. Dysmorphic, something that is, badly shaped. Dysplastic. Now this is a medical term actually. Dysplasia. It refers to this abnormal growth of various tissues that can be cancerous. So dysplastic would mean pre-cancerous actually. So dysplastic, that means it is pre-cancerous. Dystopian. Do we understand this word dystopia? I am positive that you do. You must have heard it time and again. So this is again something that is bad. Topia. Topos means land, right? So a dystopia is a vision of a world where everything is messed up, everything is bad, everybody is dissatisfied, the institutions are rotten, right? The government is perhaps the highest form of totalitarian, right? So that is a dystopia. Now, so what this author is saying is that today, instead of these long accepted political forms such as, let's say, democracies, okay, such as even, let's say, mixed economies like India has, partly socialist, partly capitalist societies, what is happening? In their place is emerging something that is very misshapen, pre-cancerous and dystopian politics. It does not have any ground, any reality to hold it. It does not have any stable meaning, and it does not even have any concrete objective, any concrete motive, okay, goal. Against such politics, traditional modes of both analysis and resistance are largely futile. So, in a democracy, for example, let's say if I take India's example, you would analyze certain political events from a democratic lens. Okay, that in this, deciding this issue, the opinion of a wider section of the society should have been taken, right? So, you analyze it from a democratic lens, various events. Similarly, the resistance is also going to be, let's say, democratic, for instance, protests, dharnas, right? So, against such politics, however, which is dysmorphic, dysplastic, dystopian, these traditional modes of analysis and resistance, they'll be futile, they won't work. Yeah, because this is dystopian politics, it won't really entertain such analysis and resistance. Yeah, you can't make sense of it through such analysis and such resistance. The rise of dispolitics, as we propose to call it. So now the authors are saying that we are naming such politics as dispolitics. Okay? Long preceded Russia's invasion of Ukraine. So this is not a new phenomenon, dispolitics, that since Russia invaded Ukraine, it has come into the picture. No, it long preceded that. Okay? Which provides, now this, however, provides a case study of its functions. Russia's war on Ukraine is a case study of how dispolitics functions. So far, so good. So the first paragraph, the opening paragraph, is a little loaded, yeah, in terms of vocabulary, in terms of your comprehension. You had to read it relatively slowly. Okay. Let's come to the second paragraph then. It says dispolitics is not about distractions, deflections, or diversions. Yeah. So dispolitics is not that, okay, the government is trying to distract you from the real issues. Right. So let's say if the economy is functioning badly, the government is trying to distract you from this issue by, let's say, bringing up the issue of religion, right? By creating divisiveness on the basis of religion. That would be a distraction. Yeah. So dispolitics is not about distractions or the government deflecting responsibility. Deflections, avoiding something, right? Like you deflect a ball when you're playing football. So, or whichever ball, right? So deflections, it's not about distractions, deflections, or diversions, changing your path, changing your route. What is it about then? It is instead an operation of substituting the constitutive elements of politics. So politics as a field of study, politics as a field of practice also, it has certain elements. Right. For example, we are concerned about the progress of citizens. Yeah. We are concerned about development. These are issues that are present in the politics of all countries, right? Various countries. So, however, what this politics does is it substitutes these constitutive elements so as to remake the perception of the political itself. मतलब कि अब जो पॉलिटिकल वर्ड है उसको ही आप रीडिफाइन करने की कोशिश कर रहे हो. पॉलिटिक्स में जहाँ पे हम डेवलपमेंट, प्रोग्रेस, वेलफेयर, पब्लिक गुड की बात करते हैं, कलेक्टिव वेलफेयर की बात करते हैं, वो सब को सब्सटीट्यूट करके आप उसको रीडिफाइन कर रहे हो बिल्कुल. ओके, बाय दिस मीन्स, using this means, it is intimately linked to the dismantling of the notion of the public good. So, because it is doing this, it is redefining politics, it is therefore dismantling, intimately linked to dismantling. When you dismantle something, you take it apart, break it. The notion of the public good, collective welfare is what I'm talking about, right? So, what happens when, let's say, this notion is dismantled? The corrosion of the public, in turn, so when you are no longer concerned about the public good, when that gets corroded, when that gets ruined in a way, okay, this affects citizens' perceptions of themselves. अभी तक आपकी कंट्री के सिटीजन्स ये सोचते थे कि उनके पास तो वोटिंग राइट्स हैं, उनके पास वोटिंग पावर है, वो चाहें तो सिस्टम में चेंज ला सकते हैं, वो प्रोटेस्ट करें तो शायद सुनवाई होगी, राइट? So till now your public was thinking that. But when you actually corrode this notion of public good, public's perception of themselves, oh, do we have any power in this society? Can we exist together? Can we progress together? All of these perceptions are challenged. Yes? And their own capacity for a political life that might enact and ensure a democratic commons. Okay? So, when, this notion of public is ruined, what happens is that it affects citizens' perception of themselves, how they view themselves, their powers, their rights, and their own capacity of actually living in a society that cares about common welfare, that is democratic in nature, all of that gets affected. Okay, so far so good? Yes? All right then. Let's see what the next slide brings. Okay, so far we are trying to just tell you what dispolitics is, what it does, right? What is its impact? Okay then. Let's see this one single paragraph. Read it and then we'll read together. Yeah. All right. So now here a bit of your knowledge comes into picture. Yes, if you have been regularly reading the newspapers, especially international newspapers, then some of these things, especially I think this is something that would be clear to a lot of you. Yes, the wall. Yeah. The so-called Muslim ban, we'll discuss this. In June 2025, again, it was sort of enacted, right? So we'll talk about this. But yes, definitely knowing about these platforms, right, and some background knowledge will help you to in a smoother comprehension of this paragraph. Okay. Now let's see this. And this politics is hardly confined to Russia. So just by reading this one sentence, I realized that now in this paragraph, the author is going to broaden the conversation to include perhaps some other countries as well. That it is hardly confined to Russia. It is something that's present in other countries as well. Okay, so this sentence is important. In the internet age of informational superfluity, what is superfluity? What is something that is superfluous? Yes. Word par made easy has this word superfluous. More than what is needed, yeah? Fluo means to flow, overflow in a way. So more than what is needed, redundant, extra, yeah? So we live in the internet age of informational superfluity, right? So I get information on my feed about, let's say, celebrities that I don't even need to know, yeah? And even other things. So not just about celebrities, etc. So we live in this age where we are given excess of information. There's an information explosion. The spectrum of, and in such an age, the spectrum of dispolitics can vary from marginal delusions, from, these minor delusions. When we are deluded, we believe in something that's not real. Yeah. So marginal delusions of Pizzagate. Now let's say you don't know what Pizzagate is, but if you know this thing, gate, when is this term used in politics in newspapers? Like there was this scam telecom spectrum, right? So it was, I think, called Telecom Gate or something. Then there was Watergate, which was it's an old US scam. So for various scams and scandals, we use the term gate. Okay, for various scams and scandals. So that means perhaps maybe this is an example of people being deluded about a scam or a scandal that was not happening, right? To more mainstream, so the spectrum ranges to such minor things to more mainstream enduring expressions such as the fantastical tropes. Tropes, basically stories that utilize or exploit a pattern. Yes, stories that just thrive on one single pattern. So these are called tropes, such as the fantastical. Now I'm calling it fantastical. Fantasy is not real. Yeah. Such as the fantastical tropes that have circulated around Mexicans and Trump's border wall. So yes, what tropes have circulated around Mexicans and Trump's border wall? Why does Trump want to create a wall? Tell me. क्या मिल जाएगा ट्रम्प को? In his opinion. So he thinks that Mexican immigrants, they are drug traffickers, they are rapists, they are, they are coming illegally to the country. So he wants to stop them through a wall. Okay. So this narrative that is being perpetuated, that Mexicans are drug traffickers, they are terrorists, or they are criminals, right? All of this is what? This is actually something that is present in dispolitics. That too, dispolitics that is present in the internet age of informational superfluity, right? So we are actually talking about misinformation here. The so-called Muslim ban. So what Trump did in 2017, he imposed travel restrictions, travel bans from a number of nations that had a majority population was Muslim population, like Iran, Yemen, Syria, right? So it was called the Muslim ban, right? And it was widely criticized. So now what Trump did in 2025, in June itself, I'm sure you must have heard of it, that he imposed again some travel restrictions, travel bans. Okay. And this was not just on international students. Okay. It was also again from some countries that have a large Muslim population. Plus this time there were other countries also, like Cuba was there, Venezuela was there, Laos was there, right? So this time it was other countries as well, and this time the document was more nuanced. So there were exemptions, etc., so that it does not draw the widespread criticism that it drew at that time in 2017. Okay, so the point, however, is that this is all a part of dispolitics. These minor delusions to versus something that is more enduring, like this narrative around Mexicans, then Islamophobia at display, right? Or the invention of the Space Force. Who knows about this? Space Force. Yes. So, Trump actually created a military force. What it would do? It's not meant for the US soil, as in for land. It is meant to protect the US interests in space. So, in the future, he sees that probably we are going to, live more and more in the space, or space warfare will become more common. So he created this force, but it had all these elements. It was super secret, okay, and it felt like they were working on something super important at this very moment. So the way it was created and the way it operates, it's shrouded in secrecy. So all this, this theater, this is very theatrical, right? काफी ऐसा नहीं लग रहा कि बस शो करने के लिए कुछ करा हो, जैसे कि इसमें कोई सब्सटेंस नहीं है, राइट? सो इट्स ऑल अ पार्ट ऑफ डिस्पॉलिटिक्स. एंड व्हाट इज पिज़्ज़ागेट? इट्स अ कॉन्स्पिरेसी थियरी, ओके, that a lot of elite people, they were involved in, including Hillary Clinton, by the way, they were involved in child trafficking, and they were actually operating this trafficking ring from a pizzeria somewhere in the US, right? So Imagine, this is the kind of stuff that is circulating on the internet, and this is the spectrum of dispolitics, from such minor delusions to very enduring narratives being perpetuated. Okay, I hope this is clear to you. Now let's talk about what we are saying next. Alt-right venues. What is alt? Alt-right. What does alt stand for here? I'm hoping all of you are with me. You're alert, awake. Alternate. It stands for alternate. Absolutely. Alternative, actually. So, alternative right. So, alt-right, alt anything, let's say alt weekly newspaper. These are used for things that are, so for instance, alt rock music will be alternative rock music. Something that is, it will diverge from the mainstream rock music. So it will be more independent, right? So alt-right venues are those which diverge from the traditional venues of right-wing politics. If you don't know right-wing politics क्या है, rightist, leftist क्या होता है, I highly suggest that you find this out. Okay? So अब जो alt-right venues हैं, now the author is being sarcastic here. So he says here, alternative, actually it does not refer to, let's say, independent, right, or an alternative to the mainstream venues. It rather refers to an alternative to a shared reality. तो ये अपनी दुनिया में है, ठीक है, ये शेयर्ड रियलिटी में बिलीव ही नहीं करते, जो रियलिटी हमारे अराउंड है, ठीक है, इनका रादर अपनी ही एक फैंटास्टिकल प्लेस है. फॉर एग्जाम्पल QAnon. So QAnon actually spread this conspiracy of Pizzagate. Yeah. 4chan. ट्रम्प के सोशल मीडिया अकाउंट्स, आई एम श्योर ऑल ऑफ यू विल रिलेट विद दिस. वो क्या ही लाइक, इट फील्स लाइक ट्रम्प लिव्स इन एन ऑल्टरनेट रियलिटी. या ही डज नॉट हैव द सेम शेयर्ड रियलिटी एज ऑल ऑफ अस. और नाम भी ट्रूथ है, सी उसके सोशल मीडिया अकाउंट का, राइट? ओके सौरभ, इंटरेस्टिंग टू नो. राइट. सो इन्फोवॉर्स, ये वॉर कॉन्स्पिरेसी थियोरी की वेबसाइट है. फॉक्स न्यूज़, सबको आई थिंक मोर ऑफ यू वुड नो अबाउट फॉक्स न्यूज़. या इट्स लाइक द प्रोपेगेंडा मीडिया फॉर all the right-wing politics, right? Politicians. So they provide ready examples of both peddlers and symptoms of American dispolitics. ये क्या है? ये sellers हैं अमेरिका की dispolitics के. ये also symptoms हैं of this disease that is plaguing America today, right? From the far right. Far right मतलब बहुत ही extreme right views हैं इन सब पे. Right? So I hope this is now clear to you. So I understand that it needed a lot of background, a lot of context. But even if, let's say, you didn't have it, even if you understood some terms like Mexicans and Trump's border wall, or Trump's social media accounts, or for that matter, let's say you were aware of Fox News, even then you could have kind of comprehended this bit. Pizzagate is basically, it's an imaginary scandal. तो ये इमेजिनरी स्कैंडल यूएस में, मतलब ये कॉन्स्पिरेसी थियोरी थी एक, दैट यूएस के जितने भी एलीट रिच लोग हैं, ओके, वो क्या चला रहे हैं? दे आर रनिंग अ चाइल्ड ट्रैफिकिंग रिंग. दे आर ट्रैफिकिंग चिल्ड्रन एंड दे आर एक्चुअली रनिंग इट फ्रॉम अ पिज्ज़ा प्लेस, ओके, अ पिज्जरिया इन द यूएस. सो इट वॉज ऑल अ डिल्यूजन, ओके, सो इट वॉज ऑल फेक, राइट? So the author is saying, now do you see that till now we are talking a lot about right wing people, and so the author is sort of criticizing the right wing for the kind of things that they are doing. Yeah, so it appears like a biased piece, appears like a very biased opinion piece so far. Yeah, but here comes the neutrality. But liberal discourse is growing strikingly similar. ऐसा नहीं है दैट यू नो बस जो राइट विंग के लोग हैं वही ये सब डिस्पॉलिटिक्स में एंगेज कर रहे हैं. जो लिबरल डिस्कशंस हैं, लिबरल आइडियोलॉजी, सो लिबरल इज अगेन, लिबरलिज्म इज अ पॉलिटिकल आइडियोलॉजी दैट इंक्रीज, आई मीन इट सेज दैट एन इंडिविजुअल शुड बी फ्री So it believes in the freedom of individuals, more and more individual rights, more and more individual freedom. And in one of its forms it says that an individual should be free to the extent that they are not harming other individuals. उसके अलावा वो जो भी कर रहे हैं उनको फ्रीडम होनी चाहिए वो करने की, राइट? तो अब जो लिबरल डिस्कोर्स है ना, लिबरल जो भी बिलीव्स हैं, डिस्कशंस हैं, ठीक है, वो भी स्ट्राइकिंगली सिमिलर ही लगने लगी हैं, वो भी डिसपॉलिटिकली लगने लगी हैं. एज वी कैन सी अंडर बाइडन, during the ongoing US enabled Israeli massacres of Palestinian civilians in Gaza. तो बाइडन के टाइम पर ऑफ कोर्स इसराइल गाजा भी कुछ टाइम से चल रही है वॉर. सो द ऑथर इज सेइंग दैट दीज आर US enabled, वेपन्स सप्लाई कर रहा है ना इसराइल को US. So these are US enabled Israeli massacres of Palestinian civilians in Gaza. Okay, so अब यहाँ पर देखते हैं लिबरल डिस्कोर्स में क्या डिसपॉलिटिकल हुआ. ठीक है, तो अब ऑथर बता रहा है, टेक फॉर एग्जाम्पल द कैरेक्टराइजेशंस फ्रॉम द वाइट हाउस, न्यूयॉर्क टाइम्स, दीज आर सपोजिडली लिबरल पब्लिकेशंस, ओके, द अटलांटिक और MSNBC of peaceful, often Jewish-led anti-war protests as anti-Semitic movements that must be repressed. तो क्या हुआ बाइडन के टाइम पर? सी there were people who were opposing Israel, of course, and these people included Jewish people themselves. It's not like all Jews are supporting Israel, right? So कुछ प्रोटेस्ट हुए बाइडन के टाइम पे जो जूइश लोगों ने ही लीड करे, विच वर अगेंस्ट द इजराइल गाजा वॉर. दीज वर एंटी वॉर प्रोटेस्ट. पर क्या किया गवर्नमेंट ने और इवन दीज सो कॉल्ड लिबरल पब्लिकेशंस ने, दे कॉल्ड दीज एंटी सेमिटिक. ओके, एंटी सेमिटिक इज डिस्क्रिमिनेटरी अगेंस्ट जूज, कि ये तो हाईली डिस्क्रिमिनेटरी हैं अगेंस्ट जूज एंड वी मस्ट रिप्रेस देम. ओके, सो हिटलर वॉज एंटी सेमिटिक, right? So imagine these were peaceful protests, these were led by Jews, just because they were anti-war and just because the US was covertly supplying weapons to Israel. It said that these are anti-Semitic movements that must be repressed by police. Okay, similarly another thing that happened, poets in Gaza, doctors in Gaza, children in Gaza, they were labeled as terrorists or as human shields, shielding Hamas. So they were called people shielding Hamas, human shields, whose extermination, killing them on a mass scale, is deemed a perhaps tragic but nonetheless necessary task. So ये narrative चला बाइडन के टाइम पर. बाइडन तो so called आपका डेमोक्रेट है ना, राइट? सो बाइडन के टाइम पर भी ये narrative चल रहा था. So the author is trying to say that even the liberal discourse is growing strikingly similar. ठीक है, so far so good. See, you wanted something dense yesterday, so I really put my heart and soul into finding something dense for you. Okay, but it's quite interesting despite being dense because it's so current and very relatable also. Okay, then let's read the third slide. Let's go. Read and let me know. Did you find this slide easier to understand because it was sort of reiterating what has been stated? लगा है थोड़ा सा इजी क्योंकि ये बात पहले भी हो चुकी है, अब हम इसको डिफरेंट वर्ड्स में बोल रहे हैं. So dispolitics effects means in a way leads to or starts, right? Brings about, actually that's what I should say, not starts, brings about. Okay, so dispolitics brings about a dematerialization of the political. Dematerialization of the political. Now I'll not explain this one sentence because there's a question on this. Okay, so try to comprehend this yourself. Dispolitics affects a dematerialization of the political, but that does not mean it is without material consequences. To the contrary, it often utilizes direct violence. And what makes it especially dangerous, pernicious, what makes it especially dangerous is that it can be appropriated, it can be seized, right, by proto-fascist and liberal regimes alike. We showed this, no, in the previous discussion also. Right वाले भी use कर रहे हैं dispolitics, okay, right wing भी इसमें engage कर रहा है, indulge कर रहा है, और liberals भी indulge कर रहे हैं. So it says that it is something that can be seized by proto-fascist. Proto means showing early signs of, in the early stages. Okay, so अब ये चीज़ जो है ये fascist regimes भी use कर पा रही हैं, proto-fascist, और liberal regimes भी कर पा रही हैं, right? So that makes it so dangerous, right? And it compels us to ask, was there a difference here to begin with? क्या इन दोनों में कोई difference भी था कभी? You know, that's what we feel like asking by seeing that this politics is being utilized by them both, right? Now, it does so by redefining politics not as a matter of the distribution of wealth. अब अच्छा देखो, ये सेम बात हमने फर्स्ट स्लाइड में भी बोली थी, राइट? दैट व्हाट इट डज इज इट रीडिफाइंस पॉलिटिक्स. अर्लियर वी यूज्ड टू थिंक ऑफ पॉलिटिक्स एज, यू नो, talking about public good, welfare, progress, development, okay, but it redefines politics not as a matter of distribution of wealth, rights, nor either negative or positive freedoms. तो अब politics इन सब चीज़ों की बात नहीं कर रही dispolitics में, but instead as infinite war against an imagined degenerate enemy who threatens to inflict national dystrophy. Okay, this is a trait of various dispolitical regimes. Okay, history में भी उठाकर देख लो. So हिटलर ने भी क्या किया, उसने बोला ज्यूज हमारे एनिमी हैं, राइट? सिमिलरली इजराइल गाजा में भी अब क्या चल रहा है, लाइक द अंडर करेंट इज दैट मुस्लिम्स आर आर एनिमी, राइट? सिमिलरली इवन मसोलिनी जो फैसिस्ट लीडर था, उसने भी ये यूटिलाइज करा दैट, यू नो, एक इमेजिन कर लो, और ये इमेजिन्ड एनिमी होता है, ये एक्चुअली रियल एनिमी नहीं है, ठीक है? ये जिसको हम कह रहे हैं कि ये लोग करप्ट हैं, ये लोग सब हमारे पैसे लेके जा रहे हैं, इनकी वजह से हम प्रोग्रेस नहीं कर रहे, दिस इज़ एन इमेजिन्ड एनिमी, दिस इज़ नॉट अ रियल एनिमी, राइट? सो however dispolitics portrays politics as an infinite war against an imagined enemy who threatens to inflict national dystrophy, national decay. Okay, so अगर ये रहेगा enemy, हमारा ये imagined वाला enemy, तो फिर तो national decay हो जाएगा. And from this enemy we have to protect our metaphysical nation. So nation no longer remains a real thing when we talk in these terms, you know, that comprises people, that comprises economy. Nation की बात हम बिल्कुल एक metaphysical terms में करते हैं, बहुत jingoistic terms में, right? Extremely patriotic terms में करते हैं कि nation जैसे कि एक बहुत ही sacred और sacred belief और idea है, तो हमें sacred चीज़ को बचाना है इस degenerate enemy से, ये dispolitics हमें कहती है, और ये infinite war ही aim है. Okay, and जैसे बाइडन ने भी, when you know he was being elected, he actually you know, joined this idea of a metaphysical nation with democracy, that democracy is so sacred, something so sacred, and I am the savior of democracy. Okay, so उसने democracy को बहुत dematerialize कर दिया. Dematerialize means again उसको reality से अलग कर दिया. Okay, separating it from reality. I was just writing it, okay, in Hindi itself, separating it from reality, making it highly abstract. So that's what Biden also did when he was being elected, that we have to protect democracy, something so sacred, and I am the savior. It must be protected, okay, from this degenerate enemy. So now again you see दोनों ही side कर रही हैं ये भी, liberal regimes और proto-fascist भी. Okay. All right. We we have talked about this projecting an imagined enemy. This is actually a feature of totalitarian regimes. So any passage that we have done that has talked about Nazism or fascism would talk about this as well. Okay. Yes, सब मान लेते हैं. क्यों? क्योंकि खाली वो एक बार नहीं बोलता, वो बार बार बोलता है, वो मीडिया आउटलेट से बुलवाता है, वो पूरा प्रोपोगेंडा उसके अराउंड बिल्ड कर देता है. एंड वी लिव इन एन इंटरनेट एज ऑफ इंफॉर्मेशनल सुपरफ्लुइडिटी. वी रेड दिस ऑन द प्रीवियस स्लाइड. एक ही बात जब बार बार रिपीट होती है अलग अलग तरीके से, बहुत कन्विंसिंगली, सो वी स्टार्ट लुकिंग एट इट एज रियलिटी. ओके. In this process, dispolitics uproots the political from any stable ground. तो अब politics word का, political कोई भी चीज़ का कोई stable ground नहीं है, वो बहुत ही एक abstract चीज़ बन गई है, वो बस sea में जैसे float कर रही है, adrift, right? There it moves with the tides as politics slowly disintegrates into an ever-shifting milieu, into an ever-shifting environment. तो politics के बारे में कुछ भी definite concrete बचता ही नहीं, वो ever-shifting बन जाती है फिर, हमेशा भटकती हुई. In which the differences upon which genuine democracy depends can now only clash. एक डेमोक्रेसी थ्राइव करती है डिफरेंस ऑफ ओपिनियन पे, डिफरेंसेस लेट्स से डाइवर्सिटी पे, राइट. बट जब पॉलिटिक्स इतनी अनहिंज्ड हो जाएगी ना, जब वो बिल्कुल रूटेड ही नहीं बचेगी किसी भी प्रिंसिपल्स में, किसी भी रूल्स में, ओके, वो ऐसे ही बस घूम रही है, फ्लोट कर रही है, तो क्या होगा? ये सारे डिफरेंसेस आपस में क्लैश करने लगेंगे. Dispolitics makes war without end into an overarching political paradigm. वो ये उसको स्टैंडर्ड बना देती है, that this is actually the overarching political standard, right? लड़ते जाना without an end. Okay? Does this make sense? In India, yes, I would say there are signs. For instance, in the media outlets, we can spot it, right? If I talk about an imagined degenerate enemy, I think on some scale we can spot that as well. So yes, actually, this world is currently being swept by this right-wing wave. That is the point that this article is also trying to make, although it hasn't covered India because again, Western publication hai ye. So it has talked about Russia and the US. But this right-wing wave is currently sweeping a lot of countries. Okay. So, yeah, so this bit is clear to you. And I think this slide was easier because it was sort of reiterating some things that we had already discussed. Okay. बस अब लास्ट पैराग्राफ है कि बहुत ही सिंपल सा, ठीक है, उसके बाद हम क्वेश्चंस करेंगे. ऑल राइट. So you see how the author is tying it back to Russia's situation. We started with Russia's situation. We are ending on Russia's situation. We are saying that precisely कब originate हुई dispolitics, ये तो impossible to locate है. But actually, it was several years in the making in Russian media. It's not an event that started with the war. It started several years before. Okay, and it can teach us a lot about our global political present, right? So we must look beyond obsessions with Putin. We must actually go beyond, just thinking about Putin to actually looking at what was happening in the political discourse, how that disintegrated. Discourse, again, a set of ideas, beliefs, communication upon which the reality is constructed. तो वहाँ का जो पॉलिटिकल डिस्कोर्स था वो उससे भी पहले से डिसइंटीग्रेट हो रहा था रशियन मीडिया में, और पुतिन इज जस्ट टेकिंग एडवांटेज ऑफ इट. ओके, सो do you remember where we started? What we talked about? Okay, what is this politics about? What is its impact? The fact that it is not just confined to Russia, right? The fact that it comes with some consequences, okay, and how it is being appropriated by fascist and liberal regimes alike, okay, and how it kind of unhinges politics, right? And then we come back to the origin, that it is impossible to locate. अब करते हैं questions, okay? चलो, question number 1, tell me, what does the author most likely mean by this statement? Would you like to go back to where this statement is? It helps, okay? So don't hesitate in going back. Read? Seen the context, absorbed it. Now let's go back. Okay, all right. What about others? Yes, I know it's been a slightly longer class, but I want you to be enthusiastic. Yes? No negative marking here, just write your answers. Absolutely correct. You are right. C is the answer. Now, 3 of you have said A also. A was the next close option, definitely. Okay. So, you narrowed down to the 2 close options. Now, those who chose C, why not A? Though dispolitics is based on abstract ideas regarding what? This option is actually vague. Abstract ideas regarding what? Then when it says it has real world implications, fine, I understand. This bit is about material consequences, concrete consequences, right? But abstract ideas regarding what, that is not stated. So this is vague. This is quite specific and very rooted in the context that we read. Okay, I specifically took you back so that you notice this bit. So dispolitics undermines shared political meaning, right? So what, see now, what does it make abstract? Politics. So when there is no shared political meaning, when that is undermined, politics will become abstract. It will become dematerialized, right? Yet it still produces tangible, material, tangible harm. Consequences, we are not talking about positive consequences in our passage, right? So harm, often through violence, yes? This is something that was visible in our context. To the contrary, it often utilizes direct violence. So C is more specific, A is vague, and that is why we choose C. Right? So see, this was an easy question for you. So just because a passage is difficult does not mean the questions will also be difficult. Yes, absolutely. Surabhi, I'm so glad you identified this. There is a tone match here, whereas there is a tone mismatch here. Right? So here harm, consequences, that is also a tonal match. Then yet, okay, undermines these things. So again, this is a tone match. Okay. All right. Okay, then let's go to question 2. Which of the following, if true, would most seriously weaken the author's argument about the pervasive nature? Pervasive means something present everywhere. pervasive nature of dispolitics across ideological boundaries. Right? We saw this, right? Across ideologies, dispolitics is present. So which of the options would actually undermine, would weaken this idea that, it is present across the ideological spectrum? Let's see what you say. We can also just go back. Acha, if we are going back, where should I go? Tell me. Which paragraph should I go to? Okay. So C, D, B, I've got a lot of them. Okay, so we'll go back. Actually, see, even when I'm trying to weaken, so I'm trying to weaken a specific case here, a specific argument here. I'm trying to weaken this idea that, it is, let's say, it is spreading beyond various, it is crossing various ideological boundaries. So for example, we first said that alt-right venues, they do this, but even liberal discourse is growing strikingly similar. That's what the author said. So we talked about the media, the websites, the media outlets, etc. But then, even the liberal discourse is growing strikingly similar, right? And then we are given examples of various outlets, how they also framed something in very dispolitical terms. Okay, so you had to remember, first of all, where was this given? Where was this given? And now we have to weaken it. Okay. Yes, Saurav, you were correct in saying the walls wala paragraph. Okay. Seems like some of you are tired. Yeah. But we have to build the stamina and endurance to read dense stuff and then attempt questions. Okay. No, B is not the answer, while a lot of you think that. Actually, yes, A is the answer. Okay. Why not B? Let's see that. Russia's war in Ukraine is driven more by territorial interests than by political disorientation or symbolic warfare. Okay. But how does that weaken this argument that, the pervasive nature of dispolitics across, we are not talking about a country's boundaries. We are talking about ideological boundaries. Ideological boundaries would be, let's say, liberals, they would say, we are very different from far right people. Yeah. Then let's say leftists would say we are very different from all of them. So this is an ideological boundary. And the author said that, you can see this discourse growing across ideologies. You can see this growing in liberal corners as well. Then the author gave us the example of what was happening, how the protests for what was happening in Gaza were portrayed. Right? So the example was that of Gaza. 2 examples, in fact. So if I say that many liberal media outlets have actively condemned the use of state violence in Gaza and supported pro-Palestinian voices, will it not weaken this idea of the pervasive nature across ideological boundaries? Because I'm showing that people of liberal ideology, they are not engaging in dispolitical stuff. Yes or no? So A actually is very related to what that paragraph is saying. B is simply saying that, okay, it is driven more by something than by and less by something else. So this is not a very effective weakening argument. not very effective at weakening. That this is something present across ideological boundaries. Ideology में हमें बात करनी है इन सब चीज़ों की, liberalism, okay, right wing politics, leftists, ये बात करनी थी. C says social media platforms now fact check. So this is social media platforms who are doing this, right? The alt-right conspiracy still exists. It's just that social media platforms are checking it. So this does not weaken the pervasive nature at all. Okay, across ideological boundaries. That means alt-right में तो हैं वो prevalent, वो conspiracies. It's just that social media अपना check कर रहा है अब. ठीक है? Okay. I honestly expected that some of you will get confused between A and D. Did this happen with anybody? The concept of the public good has remained intact in most liberal democracies despite the rise of misinformation. Yeah? Now, this looks like a tempting answer because it shows that in liberal democracies, this concept is still there. This concept of public good is still there. But tell me something, if this one concept is there, does it weaken this idea of the pervasive nature of dispolitics across ideological boundaries? Because it is possible that this concept is there. First of all, this is just one of the concepts. Dispolitical views could still be present. Okay. Also, while the concept may still be there, okay, it is possible that, it has been interpreted or it has been exploited. For example, let's say, मैं बोल दूँ, as the US president, I may say that it is for the public good that we need to build the Mexican wall. It is for the collective welfare of US citizens that I need to build the wall. Okay, so just because one concept is intact, I can't say that, this is not pervasive. But if I say many liberal media outlets, if something is a media outlet, it is spreading information to a number of people. And if they actively condemned, so that tells me that yes, it's not as pervasive perhaps, or it's not spreading across ideological boundaries. I समझ. Why A is the answer? A is the better answer as compared to D. And why B is not the answer? So this was challenging. So the previous question was easy. This one was challenging. Okay. Let's see the third one. Which of the following best captures the tone and structure of the passage? Tone and structure. Okay, others? All right. That's it. 5 responses. But all of you are correct. Excellent. So this was not that tricky. Yes, I'm sure a lot of you were thinking A but were hesitant to type. So let's have a comparison. Let's compare A with D. It says critical in tone, structured as a systematic evaluation of how symbolic politics manifests across political systems. Okay. But is the tone more critical or is it more analytical? Let's see. We can even see this just from the opening sentences. So, in the first sentence, we said that we took the example and then we said it reflects something more. It reflects dispolitics. Then we talked about what is it about, what is dispolitics about, what is its impact. Then we expanded the discussion to say it is hardly confined to Russia and it is hardly confined to the right wing. After that, we then again brought out this point that it kind of unhinges politics. It makes it abstract, but it has very real consequences. Okay, so it's harm. Then again, we kind of brought home this idea that what is the objective, then what becomes the paradigm, what becomes the standard, war without an end. So do you see, I am looking at various aspects of this politics, dissecting it, defining it, talking about its impact, talking about the fact that it's not just confined to one country or one ideology, right? So this is analysis that is happening at different levels. Okay, so analytical is the tone. Critical, I would understand when, let's say, the author was just talking on and on just about negatives. Okay, whereas here the author first defines it, then talks about its impact. So it's very systematic. It's a diagnostic exposition. Diagnostic, when you diagnose, what do? You try to find out, okay, what is its cause, what is the impact. Exposition is an explanation. So you are dissecting the nature and operations, how it functions. Russia is a case study in how it functions. Remember that sentence? So dissects the nature and operations of a political phenomenon. Okay, systematic evaluation, assessment or judgment. What is evaluation, assessment or judgment? Okay, also we haven't really focused exclusively on political systems. We have also talked about the information age. We have talked about the use of the role of internet here, right? So political systems have not really been the focus. If they were the focus, then I would be making a comparison between, let's say, how much dispolitics will be present in a democracy versus how much of it would be there in an autocracy versus how much would be there in a monarchy. Ye hota evaluation of various political systems. That has not happened. Yes, absolutely. Argumentative, it is not convincing you or persuading you in a way logically to believe something. The idea is to dissect the issue. Okay, so not argumentative. Cautionary, warning. Do you see a warning? Some sort of a warning at the end. Yes. And is it focused just on the consequences? No, it is not focused just on the consequences. So this bit is narrow and this bit is not present. Okay. Is this clear to everybody? YA? So I would say that this was again easy to moderate. This was not a difficult question. Yeah. How to retain ideas while reading. Okay, so there are one way is that, you read the opening sentences with a lot of focus, because what did I do right now? I took you back to the opening sentences only, right? Even while kind of summing up the passage, I took you to the opening sentences. So one way is that if you found the passage dense, then after reading it, just give a cursory glance to the opening sentences. It will help you to assimilate information. Okay? All right. The last question for the day, tell me, which of the following contemporary phenomena would most likely exemplify, be an example of dispolitics? Okay. All right. I've got a lot of C's in the chat box. Dispolitics. Remember, it's not about distractions. It's not about deflections that, government is avoiding responsibility or is trying to distract the public from the real issue, or is diverting from what it said earlier, that it would do this earlier, but it's diverting from it. It's not about that. What is it about? Imagine the examples. Yeah, remember the examples. Fantastical tropes, fantasy ले आते हैं उसके बीच में, उसका रियलिटी में कुछ बेसिस ही नहीं है, राइट? पिज्जा गेट. सो द थिंग इज that if a state-run media outlet that frames inflation data selectively to generate popular support for the government, that is just manipulation. Okay, it is trying to manipulate the public. Okay, so this would be a sort of in the nature of distraction, diversion and deflection. It would be in the nature of that. But look at this. Nobody asked me the meaning of a cabal. I was waiting. It's a cult or a clique. So look at this. An online movement alleging that public health policies are actually hidden strategies for mind control by a global cult. So, if you fall for these public health policies of the government, yeah, your mind will be controlled by a global cult. So these fantastical elements, they are present in B. Yes, so B is the answer here, not C. C is something that can happen in a democracy as well. It's a feature of these normal forms of political governments, right? It's in the nature of distraction, diversion, and what was the other third one? Distraction, diversion, and deflection. ये उसके nature में है, ठीक है? So B, Bangalore. So this one was slightly difficult for you. So see, 2 difficult, 2 easy questions. So all in all, I would call this a moderate to difficult passage, right? Because 2 questions तो हो सकते थे, ठीक है? But yes, dense, definitely dense. So you can read this entire article. It's present on publicbooks.org. उनका भी latest article ही है. The moment you open it, you'll spot it. Okay. I think it will have dispolitics in the title. Yeah, I've forgotten the title. And in case you're interested in languages, then you can read this. Not mandatory, but this is about Ukrainian and Russian languages. How similar or how different are they? This is from the conversation. ठीक है? CAT में definitely ऐसे ही questions आएंगे हेमेंद्र. अगर मतलब why am I doing these questions with you, right? No, it's not too late. I'm not sure actually. R7, you can still consider joining R7 because not a lot of classes have happened for it, right? Welcome, Neelu, welcome. The big beautiful bill. Okay, that's something that we can talk about in another editorial, definitely. Okay, all right. Thank you for your patience. I understand that sitting and listening to a person for 1 hour 7 minutes can be a little taxing, but yes, thank you all. I had fun. Welcome. Next class will be on Wednesday. Okay, so Wednesday 5 p.m. See you. Bye bye.